respite in
Yeah,
the middle.
few minutes. But
We're good, Marcel.
Okay, good.
okay.
Okay, so Mr. Red, take me back to how this place came about.
Well, it's all I've ever done. Okay, as a kid, I was, I was a bodybuilder. I wanted to win Mr. America since I was about 7, 8 years old. I had an uncle who was a bodybuilder, and every time he would come home, there were 8 brothers and sisters in the family, and my mother was one of them. So every time he'd come home, boy, he had to show him the muscles and all. So I was just a little bitty kid then. So really inspired by that. And then I was lucky enough in the 7th grade, my 7th grade school teacher, who was the first lay teacher in our school's history. I went to Catholic schools. Prior to that, it was all nuns. So I was lucky enough to flunk the 5th grade. And so then I had him when he came to school when I went to the 7th grade. So that was his first year of teaching, and of course my first year in the 7th grade. And so he was kind of like a bodybuilder. And he had been on a submarine. He was on a submarine Squalus, which sunk off the Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And this is in the 30s now. I'm talking about I'm in the 40s now going to school. So he inspired me, number one, to work out more, and he hand balance. And he had a son my age. So I used to go after school and we'd hand balance and work out and all. So he was a tremendous inspiration, and also inspired me to want to be on the submarine. And he spent 3 days where only about 25 guys or so lived, and he was one of them. I don't know why that inspired me to be on the submarine, but it did. And so I did all that because of those people. So it was somebody along the line that inspired me to do all these things.
So if you hadn't flunked the 5th grade,
Wouldn't have happened. That part would, that submarine wouldn't have happened. But maybe the bodybuilding would. But although I was very, very lucky, when I came back from the start of the trip in the Aleutian Islands, we went Hong Kong, China, not China, but Japan. And when we came back 6 months later, we went in the dry dock, and at 6 months we never left. And I was lucky enough to get in great shape. I won the Mr. Armed Forces, Mr. Hawaii, and then Mr. Hawaiian Islands. And then those 3 contests were the only ones held in Hawaii. And then I got a lot of publicity, and the Navy loves publicity. Because, you know, maybe when I won the Mr. Hawaiian Islands, the girl who won Miss Hawaiian Islands, she was a singer and very popular. So she's the reason we were on the front page of the newspaper, not me. But I got mentioned somewhere, and of course the Navy loves that, because the week before they might have arrested 20 sailors for drunkenness and all. So I was lucky enough to, the Admiral called me in, you know, asked me what would I like to do. I said, well, I'd like to lift weights. I want to go to the Mr. America contest. And so I didn't have to go to sea again, but I did. Every time they went to sea for 6 months, then I'd be transferred to another submarine that'd stay in port. And then we'd go shoot a torpedo every now and then, you know, but so I didn't do much after that, just work out. So I was lucky.
So what brought you back here?
Actually a job. I came home to go to Mr. America, which I didn't win, in 1959. And I had met Mike Stansbury, who owned a little health club in town. It was mostly a bodybuilding gym, not bodybuilding, but weightlifting gym. And all the weightlifters from UL, they all graduated at the same time, and that was basically his business. And they had people in town who were members and all. And some of them were members there when I worked there, and they're members here still. We're all getting a little old, but we were all at the same places. So when I came for that job, I also went to UL after he closed up, and then I'd work in health clubs at, you know, in the summertime and all, or either that or shipyards, because I had done a lot of work in shipyards before in New Orleans. I grew up in New Orleans on the West Bank. But basically, that's how I got here.
And so you got here, you worked out at that gym. When did you decide, hey, I want to open my own place?
Well, that decision was made 100 years before. You know, everybody who won the Mr. America back then all opened up a gym. Why? They didn't know what else to do.
Right.
I mean, I didn't know anything else. I mean, I wasn't really educated in anything, but I knew I liked to work out, and that's not a real prerequisite to be in the gym business. Most of the friends I meet with didn't have that on their list of doing anything. Most of them don't even exercise. You know, they just have, this is business for them. In my case, this is my life. This is my passion. I wouldn't have two. Some of the guys in, one of them has about 20 health clubs. But I mean, it's not his passion at all. It's just a method earning a living.
What was your expectation for this place when you started?
I really didn't have any. When I started, I didn't have any money. I borrowed $200 from my dad to pay my first month rent, and built my own equipment. I went home for about 2 months. I had a metal lathe, and I was fairly handy with building stuff. So I built my own equipment and went into business. But back then, there wasn't all this pieces of equipment like they have now, you know. It was basically barbells, dumbbells, chin and bars, and things of that nature. It's just, this is all developed after that. And you might not be familiar with this, but back then, when in the 50s, 40s, 50s, if you worked out with weights, they wouldn't let you play football or sports because they had this little thing about being muscle bound. You know? But yet, like I wrestled in high school and also in the Navy, we worked out with weights always. Now when the football players, we have a few football players who wrestled too when I was in high school, they didn't lift weights, they couldn't lift weights.
Wow, that's interesting. I did not know
Things
that.
have changed.
Absolutely.
Now if you don't lift weights, you
You don't
can't play
play.
football. So that's a completely changed, that has changed tremendously since the 50s, I would say.
So tell me about your facility today. You started out making your own equipment, and now you have this grandeur of a health and fitness club. Tell me about Reds as it exists today.
Well, as it exists today, is sort of a model of health clubs that's going out of business. Not necessarily out of business, because some of them have been around for 100 years. Like the NOAC in New Orleans Athletic Club, it's been there since the 1800s. And to me, it's got a serious soul. It's a fabulous place. But for most people, it wouldn't be. You know, they would walk in there and say, "What's this place?" Because you get a little wear and tear. We don't get used here; we get abused. And so the place has a lot of wear and tear. You got to constantly be, you know, fixing things up and maintaining it, and that gets tough. Like my building's almost 50 years old in most places, and it takes a lot of repairs and maintenance, which takes a lot of money. And but this place is sort of different. It's not really a health club, although I look at it as a health club. Yeah, what kind of business? I'm in the gym business. But then other people look at it differently, you know, like tennis club too. Not that I'm not interested in tennis, but it's just, it's not what we're really in business for when we started. This was pure weight training. That's all it ever was. But then over the years, we developed this and developed that. And I have a little passion for every month I want to make a change. It's not always an improvement, but I want to make a change. Like at one time, we used to have 12 racquetball courts. That came in, you know, I don't remember the exact time, but 70s or late 70s. And we ended up with 12 racquetball courts. If the bank would have kept loaning me money, I'd have probably built 20 of those things. I don't know what I'd be doing with them now, because all we have is 4. And so those things change in any kind of business, but weight training is still the basic part of our business. And that's what we are. We're a gym with a workout.
Well, you mentioned that this is the model for clubs that are going out of business. What do you think clubs are shifting to now?
Weight training.
Weight training.
Surprisingly. I mean, you go to like a Anytime Fitness, they're great operators, you know, they do a great job, but they're just weights, just like the gyms I went to. I was lucky enough in New Orleans, I was a member of the NOAC in the summer. It was a men's club. I mean, they had all kinds of stuff. They had a bar, all kinds of things that I couldn't even go in as a kid. You couldn't even go in the locker rooms. You had to use the kids' locker room. And we do a little bit of that here too. But they became now, they went from what they started, like I started just in the weightlifting business. And now we have all this other stuff around us, basketball, this stuff, that stuff, tennis, swimming pools. I mean, the little new gyms don't want that. They don't want that, and I understand that, and that's how I started. And I was lucky enough in New Orleans that Joe Gold's gym, he opened his first gym in New Orleans in 1953. And I was lucky enough to be there probably the first day. And I worked out at with Joe and other places. I mean, I kind of worked out with them. And I was lucky enough to win the Mr. New Orleans and things like that in New Orleans. And then, but that's how this developed.
Do you think Reds will ever go out of business with the changes you're seeing in gyms?
Look, I want to tell you right now, they better not go out of business because I like my job. I want to work here, and I will make this work if I have to. I don't care if I have to get rid of my toys and all that. This is my baby.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, you hear people in Lafayette, but in Acadiana saying, they don't say when their members here that they're just going to the gym, they're going to Reds.
Yeah, that
It has become synonymous, a name that stands out on his own.
Well, you know, it didn't start that way.
Right.
In other words, it was Red Lerille's Health Studio, excuse me, on Johnston Street, and that's what they were called. They were called studios. And but basically we're gyms, you know. Like when Joe Gold opened in New Orleans, he was Ajax Gym. And I said, why Ajax Gym? He says, well, A is the first letter in the alphabet. So when you look in a phone book, I don't even know if they make phone books anymore, but when you look in a phone book, we're the first under health clubs or gyms or whatever, Ajax. And then he ends up in the business, World Gym is the last one. And it was still phone books back then, you know. In fact, I have a hard time learning how to use the phone, the new phones. But yeah, but I don't think this will go out of business. In Denver, I visited a club there, the Denver Athletic Club, and it was like the New Orleans Athletic Club, and they're going full blast again. And it now is just a health club. But they still have that part of their membership that, I mean, they got a beautiful place for this, and they're big into squash, beautiful squash courts, all the pictures on the wall of way back when, just like in New Orleans Athletic Club. And that kind of turns me on about the gym business, because this kind of club makes you feel like you could do a lot of stuff, and you can. I got people spend the whole day here. I got some retired folks that live here.
Right. This is their social outing.
I've had some people who die here, okay? And I hope I do too. I don't want to die, but when I die, I wouldn't mind dying here. Yeah.
So tell me about some of the things that you've learned about the gym business. Some of the hokiest, most crazy things you've ever heard people come in and say they think they can do, and in reality, it's not what's going to happen.
You mean as far as themselves, what can happen to them? Well, you can change your life, okay? I mean, I came from a little skinny kid, you know. You're probably not old enough to remember the Charles Atlas ads and the funny books and all, or whatever you call them, comic books now. We call them funny books. But anyway, those stories are true. I mean, a lot of people do that. And I have people who come here who've gained 100 pounds. I've had people who come here who've lost 100 way plus pounds. We don't advertise that to anybody because you can't guarantee people that. Charles Atlas kind of did, and he sold a little mimeograph program, even told you how to take a bath, because this is in the 30s now, and it's still available.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I bought one about 20 years ago, so it's still out there. an attorney from Arkansas owns Charles Atlas, you know, the whatever. I mean, he sells all kind of other stuff too. You know.
Through the years, is there anything that has happened here that's impacted you more than anything else?
Yeah, we're still here. That's the biggest impact. You know, I mean, nowhere in my wildest dreams in 1963, I thought I would still be here 55 years later. It's been an unbelievable experience, but a lot of that's because of Lafayette. When I stepped off Trans-Texas Airlines, September the 9th, 1959, I didn't realize that day I'd stepped off in heaven. I mean, it's just the greatest place on earth to live. And you know why? There's no special thing here. It just is. And I think most of it's the people. I grew up on the west bank of the river in New Orleans. And I mean, I'm as coon-ass as anybody. I mean, my family comes from Bayou Lafourche, and a lot of relatives there. And yeah, it just, so when I came here, I was perfectly at home. I didn't have to transition anything.
Yeah, this place has a way of welcoming you in.
Easily.
And wrapping its arms around you, and they never let go.
No, it's an easy town, you know. You go to a lot of places, not easy. And there's some places close to here that's not easy. You know, you don't have to go too far east. You definitely don't have to go too far north. You might have to go pretty far west. But it's a little, Lafayette's unusual, very unusual.
What is it that you want people who come here to get from this facility that has your name on it?
Well, I'd like to see them all in great shape. I mean, this is the first goal, is to be in shape. That's what this place is for, and that's what all these type places are for. People should be and want to be in shape, and exercise is one way. You certainly have to eat properly and all, but there's no magic anything. You know? I'm sure there's some drugs out there that are quite magical, but basically you just have to eat healthy, exercise on a regular basis, and I'm an ungodly scheduled person. I mean, I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I pedal my bicycle here, and I'm recovering from a broken leg, but I'm still pedaling a bike right now. But I pedal my bike here, normally get here at 2:30, open up, and stay here till about 1:30, and I take a break from 1:30 to 3:30, and I'm back here till 6:30, gradually getting back to the 7, which I normally used to do. But yeah, I think I love my job. You know, I don't want to lose it. I got 4 kids who might want to kick me out one day, but I want to be here.
So when you walk around this place and you talk to the people who are in here, what's that feeling you get?
Well, sometimes I get a good feeling, and sometimes I get criticized like everybody else. I mean, your TV station's a great TV station, but not everybody's happy with what you do. And the same thing here. I mean, I get some high praises, but also every now and then get knocked down a little bit too. This is the real world. I realize it's Lafayette, but it's still the real world.
Absolutely,
you know?
it sure is.
And the ups and downs, like right now, we're suffering a little bit because of the oil economy. And, you know, and that could happen again. Hope I'm living long enough for it to happen again. But, you know, things have changed here a lot, you know. But when I first opened up, there was nowhere in the world a place like this could exist at Lafayette. I don't know what the population was then, but I remember Youngsville was a street.
Right.
Broussard was the Y Cafe. And now, look at those. They're the fastest growing towns in Louisiana.
They are.
Yeah, and a great place to live. It's the same people, you know.
Okay, Mr. Red, we're going to do like a round robin of questions. I'm going to throw out some questions at you. Just give me the first answers that come to mind, okay?
I'm not too good at that, but give me a shot.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll get through it. What's the most important object you own?
Well, of course, my family, if I can put it that way, my wife and my kids. And I was lucky enough to be here.
Absolutely. Best book you ever read?
One summer, 1927. I read it 3 times. I don't read. That's how I flunked the 5th grade. I couldn't read, okay? But I listened to books, and I started listening to books in 1963.
Wow.
A guy couldn't afford a membership, and it was $60 a year. But he says, I have a success motivational course. Can I swap you? I said, yeah, I'll take it. And it was on little records and had a little record player, the whole thing. Very inconvenient to listen to books. But I started doing that, and I said, whoa, I found something I can do. I can listen, although my mother thought I couldn't listen or never listen.
That's awesome.
But,
Your first audio book in 1963.
Yes. But back then it was all success motivational books. Back then they didn't have, every book right now you can get it on Audible, on your little iPhone. You get in your car, it starts playing. I get on my bicycle, I got little earphones on, I can listen to books instead of music. And I don't dislike music, but it sure is a lot of fun to be educated at the same time while you're exercising.
Right.
And that made a tremendous difference in my life.
What's your favorite piece of gym equipment?
Well, depends on my age. At the beginning, it was chin bar and squats, bench presses, and dips. And those were, basically, I was still doing a lot of movements that they made no machines for. But I like machines now, so you can do all kinds of stuff. And as you get older, you want to be a lot safer. And because I'm prone to accidents. I've been over the handlebar on my bicycle many times.
Oh, no.
But I try to be a little more careful and conservative. Of course, I'm not strong like I used to be. And I would love to be, but I'm not. So you got to change things around as time goes on. But the important thing is you got to have a schedule. You got to be on a schedule. If you're not on a schedule, you can't do anything.
If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Stay young.
That's a good one. I might have to buy into that one as well.
That might not happen, but it's nice to try to stay young.
Your biggest regret?
I don't know if I have any real regrets. I love what I do. I love my family. I love my workers. I don't know how many things I would change if I could live my life again. If I could start back in the 5th grade, Sister Marie Leonard could flunk me again. I think I would do the same things. And I've been very lucky in my life in many ways.
If you could turn one activity into an Olympic sport, what would you win gold in?
Well, the only thing I did was weight training. Well, I did wrestle, and that is an Olympic sport. I don't think I'd worry about that. When I look back at the Mr. America and all, that was a big thing in my life. I have a method of acquiring things, and I put a picture on the wall, and I dare it not to show up. Well, I started when I was about 7 years old, putting pictures of Mr. America. Like when I was on a submarine, I'd put a picture in my little locker, which is about that big. Not a guy next to me might have had a picture of Marilyn Monroe. The other guy might have had Jane Mansfield, and those were the top ones back then. But and we were going to see 80 men, and we're going to see for 2 months at a time. I said, so they must have looked at me and said, boy, what do we have on board now? But I've always done that, and never, ever have I missed.
That's fantastic. Now, you told me in 1959 you lost Mr. America.
Yeah,
right?
boy, yeah, but then the next year I won.
You won.
You can compete again till you win. Now, that's all changed tremendously.
Okay.
When I won the Mr. America, it was under the AAU, America Athletic Union, and all that. It's not that way anymore. In fact, the Mr. America wasn't even held for a few years. And there's a guy in Annapolis, Maryland, who bought the Mr. America. And so he's been trying to revive it. He's struggling with that because bodybuilding and weightlifting has changed tremendously.
Absolutely. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
I like vanilla, but I always throw some raisins or something in it.
Yeah, to keep
I
it
have
healthy,
my first,
right?
yeah, somehow or another you have to rationalize, So I'm eating ice cream, but you have to understand we own an ice cream parlor too.
Right.
Yeah, and so I gotta say I like vanilla, Borden's vanilla.
Good. If you didn't sleep, what would you do with the extra hours of the day?
I don't sleep much. Number one, I like TV. Thank you, Red.
Thank you.
I do like TV. I like movies. I like building stuff. I built 18 airplanes.
Wow.
Most of them were built originally in the 30s, and I've overhauled them. Some I've done 3 times, some because of a little accident, and others because the fabric goes bad. So that's my favorite thing, which my mother taught me how to do.
Your favorite place in the world?
Lafayette, Louisiana.
If
That didn't take long,
that
did
didn't take
it?
long at all. Describe your perfect day.
Perfect day is definitely waking up at 2 o'clock, working out, riding my bicycle after I work out. So I spend 2 hours, 2.5 hours exercising of some type. And then I go home, shower, shave, eat breakfast. Then I hurry up and go to the St. Mary's Church for Mass at 7. Then when I was flying, I'd run, I can't get in and out of an airplane now. I'd go to the airport, putt around a little bit, and then be at work for 8:30, 8:45. That's
starting the day here.
and then every now and then I'll drive a little fancy car or ride a motorcycle, stuff like that.
If you weren't here, if Reds as we know it did not exist, what
I don't
would you
have
be
a
doing?
clue. No, because I never really dreamed about that. I never thought about how long Reds would last, how much money I would make. It's surprising I still don't worry about that too much. When I go check and see what we have, like do we have money to do this, it would be something to do to Reds, except for my birthday. I buy me a gift every year.
You buy yourself a gift? When's your birthday?
June 9th, but I already bought it.
What did you buy, if you don't mind me asking?
A Lamborghini, another
That's a
one.
very nice birthday gift.
Yeah, it is. I take care of myself. That's why I don't want anybody to buy me a gift. I take care of myself.
That's good. Self first, right?
Yeah, for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we're done.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure.
Yeah.
It really is.
But you got a lot of